All right. Welcome, everyone, to this deep dive. We've got quite a stack of sources in front of us today.
Yeah, it looks like a real snapshot, mostly focusing on headlines and facts coming out of Nigeria, dated June 3, 2025.
Exactly. And you also threw in some, well, really intriguing historical bits and some general facts, too.
It's quite a mix, everything from big national announcements and government stuff right down to, like, local incidents, economic figures,
Yeah.
and those surprising historical notes as well.
Right. So our mission today, basically to quickly sift through all this information you provided, pull out the key knowledge, the insights, maybe connect a few dots, and hopefully give you, the listener, a clearer picture of what was really standing out on this specific day just based on these sources.
We'll help you navigate it. Think of it like a guided tour through this moment in time. We'll highlight what seems important, what's maybe a bit unexpected.
I'm trying to figure out why these particular things might matter in the bigger context. We're going to be touching on government actions, security issues that just seem to persist, economic shifts, education challenges.
And yeah, even stepping back in time a bit.
Okay, so let's dive right in. Looking at the national scene first in this stack, one of the first things that really stands out is a big announcement from the federal government.
About public holidays.
Yeah.
Right, declaring Friday and Monday as public holidays for Eid el-Kabir, which is, standard procedure for a major religious holiday. It basically pauses official activity, a lot of business too.
A planned pause.
A planned pause, exactly, a sort of national downtime.
Okay, but then right next to that piece of information, you included this report about, well, over 450,000 Nigerians applying for just 10,000 federal government jobs.
Wow, that number.
That figure is it's staggering. It immediately tells you something really critical about the employment situation, doesn't it? The sheer scale of that challenge.
It really does. It shows the immense pressure, on the very few formal jobs available.
And then, sort of contrasting with that planned holiday pause, you also flagged reports that judiciary workers were actually on strike.
That's right, effectively grinding the courts to a halt.
So you've got official holidays stopping things, you've got hundreds of thousands desperate for work, and then an unplanned strike messing up another critical part of the system like the courts, all happening at the same time.
Yeah.
What does that combination tell us about just the rhythm of life and governance on that day?
Well, it paints a picture, doesn't it? A system operating under all these different, sometimes conflicting pressures. You've got the mandated breaks, you've got intense social demand for jobs, and then labor disputes causing these unpredictable stoppages. It's a complex daily reality.
Okay, shifting gears quite dramatically now, the reports you included from that flood in Mokwa and Niger State, they're just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
The numbers are really stark.
They really are. The state government reporting over 1,000 people still missing and 200 bodies recovered. It just highlights the terrible human cost of natural disasters.
And the huge challenge it poses for disaster response, for the authorities, the communities.
Absolutely. It's a massive crisis needing immediate attention, resources.
And sadly, that wasn't the only report of, well, mass casualties in this collection you provided.
Yeah.
We're seeing headlines like 43 killed as Benue boils again. And that report from Zamfara, mourning vigilantes reportedly killed in an airstrike.
These headlines, they just underscore the really deep, multifaceted security problems Nigeria is dealing with. It affects so many different communities, different regions.
Yeah.
Even those like the vigilantes who are trying to provide security themselves. It shows the conflict isn't just one type or in one place.
And then in Delta State, there's this situation described as particularly volatile.
Yeah.
Security agents reportedly opening fire on residents.
Yes, residents who are protesting the constant kidnappings.
Right.
That report is incredibly serious. It captures this direct confrontation. It stems from people just being desperate about security failures.
And it escalates tragically.
Tragically escalates into more violence, this time involving state actors. It speaks volumes about, a breakdown in trust and the dangerous results of insecurity that isn't resolved.
Okay, so amidst all these reports of crisis and conflict, you also included notes on political and social movements, like the Take It Back movement, saying no going back on June 12 protest.
Right. That indicates, ongoing civil society activism, the intention to mobilize people, often using historically important dates like June 12th.
To voice grievances, demand action.
Exactly. It shows there's still a space for protest, for dissent.
And then scattered through the stack, you find these headlines that are, well, let's just say they add a different kind of color, like Speed Darlington needing to reschedule an NFPT appearance.
Right. Internal chuckle, not voiced.
Or DeVito reuniting with an ex for his daughter's birthday.
Yeah, those definitely give you a broader slice of life, don't they? What captures public attention beyond the big national issues? Legal issues for entertainers, personal family stuff.
It reminds you that even with all the major stuff happening, the everyday world keeps turning, sometimes dramatically, sometimes just personally.
Precisely.
Okay, let's shift from the personal and political now and look at the economic picture reflected in your sources. The presidency claiming Nigeria secured over $50 billion in foreign investment. That's a prominent claim.
It is, through diplomatic efforts, they say. If that figure is accurate, it's pretty substantial. It's clearly aimed at signaling economic progress, right? Showing that government policies are working to attract capital.
And they're also reportedly moving to settle a massive power debt, N2 trillion.
Yeah. Tackling that legacy debt in the power sector is absolutely vital. The unreliability of electricity, it's such a huge drag on economic growth.
So dealing with the financial mess in that sector is sort of foundational.
It really is a necessary step towards maybe seeing some improvement down the line.
What other economic or infrastructure points kind of jumped out at you from this collection?
Well, you included the federal government's estimate needing $180 billion every year just for road maintenance.
Wow. Just maintenance.
That number alone tells you about the sheer scale of the infrastructure challenge. Then there's $70 billion raised through PPTs for housing, the government selling short-term bonds, plans for 175 new CNG stations that links into fuel and energy policy changes, and unveiling a single-digit mortgage scheme, but specifically for civil servants.
So it's a real mix of big figures, specific initiatives, crossing different sectors.
Yeah.
Infrastructure, finance, housing, energy, even social programs for certain groups.
Yeah. What do you make of that variety?
Well, it shows they're trying multiple things at once, right? Trying to address the economy, the infrastructure gaps from different angles.
But it also just highlights how broad the challenges are, from enormous maintenance costs to very specific financing tools for things like housing.
You also included some potentially positive economic news bits, though. Nestle and the FT working together on milk production.
Yes, boosting local production. And Fidelity Bank getting an upgrade from Fitch, the ratings agency.
Okay.
And Shell loading the first crude oil from a new terminal.
Right. Those offer a bit of a counterpoint. They show specific things happening in certain sectors, maybe perceived progress from outsiders like Fitch. The Shell report is obviously relevant to the crucial oil and gas sector.
And that little note about low taxation potentially being a factor in cheaper fuel, according to major marketers, that just adds another layer to the whole complex fuel pricing issue.
Okay, let's pivot again. Education, another critical area, and it's covered quite a bit in your sources here. The report from UNICEF stating that primary school leavers in Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe can't read. That's incredibly stark.
It really is. It points to a foundational crisis, doesn't it? Right at the primary level, and particularly acute in those regions hit hard by conflict, by poverty.
It's not just about education then, is it? It has deep social, economic consequences for the future of those areas.
Absolutely. And the problems seem to cascade upwards through the system. You included reports about WAEC, the exam council, facing a N100 billion lawsuit.
Yeah, and also having to explain why they're holding exams late at night. Blaming leakages, compromises, and logistics. That sounds concerning.
Very concerning. Then you have Kano University students protesting fee increases and stakeholders disagreeing with WAEC and NICO about using computer-based testing, CBT, for the main school leaving exams.
So taken together, what picture does that paint?
It paints a picture of a national examination system under, well, severe strain. You've got administrative problems, legal fights, debates about access and technology, and students protesting costs.
It highlights systemic issues affecting millions of students.
Definitely. And that call for polytechnics to be allowed to award degrees, that shows there's also a debate about the whole structure, the recognition within higher education itself.
Okay, let's just pause for a second. Looking at this really intense flow of daily news, I was really struck by some of the historical facts you slipped into this collection. For instance, did you know about the famous Nok terracotta sculptures?
Ah, yes, those incredible figures. Discovered near Taruga, later named Nok, after the village where more were found. That discovery back in 1928. It's such a powerful reminder of Nigeria's incredibly rich, ancient, artistic past.
It really gives you a different perspective, doesn't it, when you're grappling with today's headlines? to suddenly place them against this backdrop of millennia of human history, of cultural achievement, right there on that land.
Exactly. It's like a grounding point, a very different timescale.
Absolutely. Feels like a deliberate breath, almost.
You also included a note about the National Association of Baseball Players being set up in New York, way back in 1857. Yeah, an interesting snippet of U.S. sports history. Shows how sports were getting formalized, organized back in the mid-19th century. It's a completely different thread, isn't it? Just illustrating how cultural institutions were evolving elsewhere in the world around that time.
And maybe the most intriguing one, that today in history note, about Martin Baham presenting the world's first globe, the Erdapfel, in 1492.
The very first attempt to show the whole world as a sphere. Imagine that moment. It's such a powerful symbol of that early human drive. The ambition to map everything, understand the whole known world.
That urge for exploration, for putting all the information together.
Which, in a way, is kind of what we're trying to do here, isn't it? Mapping the landscape of just a single day's events from the sources you gave us?
It really does put things into perspective. Okay, stepping back into the present day, your sources include a whole range of local government actions reports. They show how these bigger national issues play out at the state level.
You really see a wide variety of activities, don't you? Enugu ordering a disco to refund customers for overbilling, that's like direct consumer protection.
Right.
Kogi State paying off some debt financial management. Katsina unveiling new school guidelines that connects back to education. Abia warning about diphtheria public health alert.
Lagos launching clean cook stoves and an agricultural grant project.
Environmental and economic initiatives, yeah. Oyo sealing a restaurant that collapsed, reviewing traffic fines, that's safety, urban management. And Kano declaring a school holiday for Eid that echoes the national announcement just at the local level.
It shows the huge scope of what state and local governments are dealing with day to day, reacting to issues, implementing policies, often linked to that national picture we were discussing.
Definitely. And unfortunately, the security issues you highlighted earlier, they persist at this local level too, very clearly in your sources. An Osun court remanding a man for allegedly killing his own mother. That tragic electrocution death in Rivers. Gunman killing an investor and kidnapping his wife in Imo State. A death in an Osun cult clash during a festival.
The report of a school vice principal in Ondo being beaten up by parents.
Yeah, and arrests or jailings for sexual abuse in Bauchi and other places.
These are just stark reminders, aren't they? That alongside the big national headlines, communities are grappling with everyday crime, violence, really complex social problems.
They are a critical part, often deeply personal, part of the daily reality reflected in these sources. They underscore how pervasive insecurity and social challenges are, not just limited to specific conflict zones.
Okay, finally, your stack included just a few international headlines. Meta shareholders rejecting a plan to add Bitcoin to the company treasury.
Yeah, interesting corporate governance, finance news.
Trump being open to meeting Ukrainian and Russian leaders.
That geopolitical signal there.
And sadly, 3 Nigerians jailed for fraud in India.
These just remind us, that events in Nigeria don't happen in isolation. They're part of a global picture, influenced by international politics, finance.
And involving Nigerians living and interacting all over the world.
Right. And that report about nurses leading the way as 60,000 Nigerians join the NIDICOM portal, the Diaspora Commission, that reinforces just how significant the Nigerian diaspora is.
And you finished the whole collection with a quote from Rafael Nadal. It is important to recognize the small successes.
Yeah.
Given the weight of so many of the headlines we've just talked through, that quote feels, particularly relevant somehow.
I think so too. It feels like a crucial reminder, doesn't it? When you're reporting on huge challenges, big crises, to also look for and actually acknowledge the small steps forward, the individual efforts, the positive developments, no matter how small they might seem, next to the bigger problems.
What an incredibly dense journey that was, through just one day's worth of information, basically.
We really navigated quite a range, didn't we? From national holidays and crippling strikes to devastating floods and ongoing security crises.
Through major economic claims and grassroots protests, across educational hurdles and really detailed local government stuff.
All sort of mixed in with those fascinating historical and general facts you included from your specific sources.
And the real value here, hopefully, is in sifting through all of that efficiently, like you asked, to get a genuine sense of how interconnected things are, how complex the issues were on that particular day.
Yeah, it gives you a picture that's not just isolated events, Right. But how they kind of weave together to form the broader landscape.
So whether you, the listener, were trying to understand national dynamics or economic trends or social challenges, or maybe just curious about what a day's news looked like.
These seemingly scattered facts, they do paint a pretty vivid picture of the environment.
Right. And looking back over this specific collection, all those reports on insecurity, the economic struggles, the political moves, the social issues, alongside those moments of cultural reflection, the historical context.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? What does this particular mix of daily headlines suggest about the ongoing experience? You know, governance, resilience, just daily life for people in Nigeria right now.
How do those big picture claims about the economy or security, how do they actually connect with the very real, often quite grim local realities that were also reported here?
And maybe stepping back even further,
Yeah.
how do today's events or that day's events connect with bigger global trends or historical contexts, like that first attempt to map the whole world or the incredibly long history of art and culture in Nigeria itself?
What can a single day, seen just through this specific lens, this collection of sources you provided, really tell us about the deeper, ongoing story?
Yeah, definitely something for you to continue thinking about as you process this deep dive into the material